Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today we're going to talk about the four types of cameras and their pros, their cons, and what it all means in the end. Okay, so first thing is there's four different types, main types of cameras. DSLR, and we'll talk about those here in a second. Mirrorless, point and shoot, and your mobile devices, your mobile phones. Now your mobile phones are also kind of sometimes slid into the same category of point and shoots because essentially they are a point and shoot, but we'll talk about it here in a second. Okay, so the first thing that we have here is DSLRs. Our DSLRs are bigger cameras. There's more lens choices for now, although the mirrorless cameras are starting to catch up to that lens choice option. The DSLR has moving parts inside of it, and that's why it's so much bigger. So when you take a photo, there's an actual mirror that flips up and a shutter that opens up with that mirror and exposes the sensor to the light and then takes your photo from that. We get our digital SLRs from the old days in photography when we had our single lens reflex cameras, or SLRs, which also had a mirror in it, and it gives us a way to look at what our lens is seeing. Because before we had that, our little viewfinders on our cameras were either kind of above the lens or to the side of the lens, and it was just kind of a hole that was punched through the camera so you could kind of see what you were getting versus totally guessing. So it took a little bit of the guesswork out of those older film cameras. We got our single lens reflect. We knew exactly what our lens was looking at. And the single lens, the digital SLRs, work on a optical viewfinder. So what you're seeing is actually what the lens is seeing. There's no electronics in between that. So the digital SLRs are starting to move a little to that little bit older tech side as mirrorless cameras kind of come in. The mirrorless cameras will probably eventually take over the digital SLRs totally in the near future. One benefit with this is that as you change your lens on your SLRs, the sensor is protected because there's all of those things in front of it that protect it from dust and rain and wind and all of those things as you're changing your lens. So that's a benefit. They are more expensive as far as like point and shoot and digital SLRs. The digital SLRs are more expensive. Mirrorless cameras, they're a little bit smaller. They're close to the same size as digital SLRs, but they're a little less weight. Because they can be a little bit more compact without all of those moving parts. So they have no moving parts, which can be a benefit because there's nothing to get jammed or to break or any of those kinds of things. However, the sensor is exposed while changing your lens. As soon as you pop open the lens on a mirrorless camera, that sensor is exposed on top of a lot of the other sensitive electronics that are inside of the camera. And so you might not have any moving parts, but you have really sensitive electronic parts that if they get bumped, wet, dust, whatever, kind of ruins the camera from there. As far as lens choice is concerned, they have a little bit less lens choice for now. That really is starting to catch up, and it's starting to be kind of equal. So the line between this is a digital SLR and this is a mirrorless camera is starting to really get blurry, and it's hard to tell which one's better, which one's this, which one's that. As far as photography is concerned, and the quality of the photo, mirrorless right now has just a slight advantage over the digital SLRs because of the sensor. You can capture the entire sensor size with a mirrorless camera, where the edges of the sensor on a digital SLR usually aren't catching all of the light, and so it's a little bit blurry, a little bit less quality on the digital SLRs. So they are a little bit higher quality, but not by much, and that line is getting very blurry. So, in fact, the line between all of these are getting very blurry. This is a video. I'll link this in as a resource below. We won't watch it right now, but this is a really good explanation. I'll link this PowerPoint as a resource. You can watch it in there on your own time. Some point and shoot cameras. Okay, so point and shoot cameras, or your mobile device cameras, right? We carry them around in our pockets all the time, just like this guy, right? It's a lens that is fixed. They're super compact. They're simple. They're easy to use, and they're usually the least expensive. And as technology has begun to progress, the point and shoot cameras have gotten really, really good to the point where it's, again, that line is starting to blur with putting those up next to professional DSLR cameras. Now, would I suggest you go out and shoot a wedding with something like this? No, because you're going to look like a goober, okay? Going out shooting something like that. I would suggest having a professional looking camera, and I know that sounds a little bit silly, but this is also something that's talked about in that video on the previous slide. Sometimes what clients expect a professional photographer to look like isn't always what they see, and so if you show up to a wedding shoot or to a professional shoot with something like this, with clients not completely understanding how everything works, they might feel like you're cheating them out of money. There is still some big advantages to the mirrorless and DSLRs over point and shoots. Some of those advantages: you have a lot more control. You can interchange lenses. You can, like I say, you have a lot more control over your photo. Timing, all of those things, shutter speed, aperture, ISO, all of these terms that we'll get familiar with later on. There's just a little bit extra level to that. There are some applications that allow you to control a lot of that with your point and shoot cameras, with your mobile devices, but typically it's not great. But a lot of point and shoot cameras do awesome work. And so what's the conclusion, the point, right? The end of this is that the gear doesn't really matter. Gear doesn't make or break a photographer. In fact, gear might actually end up hurting a photographer if you don't know how to use it. And that's the point, is that with gear, as you get more familiar with each of these sets of cameras, and you learn their limitations, and you learn the photographic composition rules and those things, you begin to be a better photographer even with a phone, right? Or with a simple disposable camera, right? That you could buy at Walmart for a couple of bucks, and it's an old film disposable camera. They actually probably don't sell those anymore. But anyway, point is you begin to learn the limitations of your camera, and that's what you work within, and that's how you become a better photographer, because you need to understand the limitations of your equipment versus the equipment determining what you can and cannot do. So the gear shouldn't matter, and that's our types of cameras. If you have any questions or concerns, you can rewatch this, or you can send me an email or contact me through Canvas, and look at the assignments below, and we'll get rocking and rolling on this. See you in the next one, guys.